Oh my gosh, I think the hardest thing, I don't know if it's for everyone, but for me, is like introduce yourself. Like, it's so simple, but then sometimes you prefer when people introduce you, because for me, I love to see myself from other people's perspective. But anyway, here we are. So my name is Lynne Wachira, a sports journalist. But recently, I love to say that I am somewhere in between sports journalism and the business of sports itself. You know, the way they say in life, you find yourself balancing two bags, and that's where I find myself recently. Obviously, journalism, first love, where it all started, but I could say I'm on a transition, literally, into the business of sports, into athletes management, athlete support, and just helping them figure out their careers beyond running and out of running. Yeah, basically that's what I would say about myself. I know, right? Yeah, have you ever just sat and you're like, okay, wait a minute, this was definitely divine, because I love all sports. I'm an all-rounded sports journalist. Like, I'm going to report about each and every sport. I love being at the stadium to watch and cover like each and every sport. However, for athletics, it's an affair, like it's different. For track and field, it's incredibly, I don't know how to describe it, but for me, it's really like a love relationship. I love the athletes themselves, who they are, how they put themselves out there. I love the sport itself as well, just always a race against the clock. Also just a race where it's just you. Like, most of the times, it's not you and teammates. It's not like, it's just really you. You and your body, you and your muscles, you and your mind, you and this is what I can do. I think I really love that about athletics. But then also, it's the rich history, when you think about Kenya, when you think about all those incredible athletes that we've had, from Kipchoge Kayana, from Kathleen Dereba, from Naftali Temu, the list is endless, So I think for me, what really attracted me to the sport, first of all, is understanding the history. But I also think part of it was played out because when I was on internship, when I was in campus at KBC, the 2008 Olympics were on. That's when my internship at KBC was on as well, before going back to school. And obviously I interacted a lot now with the Olympics, and when it comes to Kenya, you have other sports going to the Olympics, and recently, of course, you have good performances, coming out of boxing, of volleyball, of rugby. But when it comes to medal hunt, athletics remain the #1 sport. And so I think sitting in the newsroom, following, watching keenly, reporting, writing about the athletes, about the successes, sitting there and seeing someone like Pamela Jelimo become the first Kenyan woman to win an Olympic gold medal, and just the history and the weight that it carried that time, I got so intrigued by just the history and achievements and what it actually means. So I started looking at the Olympics, or at athletics, beyond just someone crossed the finish line. It was more of, who are they? Where did they come from? What did they do to get here? Why did it take so long for a woman to win a gold medal at the Olympics? Why have men been winning more? And I think literally that's where it probably kind of started. So by the time I was done with school and got to the newsroom, it was clear where my interest was. It was obviously athletics. That was a love affair, and then everything else. And I honestly don't regret. Athletics has given me so much. It has built, my career has built me as a person, relationships. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I'm going to be very honest. Here's the thing. When I started, I don't think, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, I got into it so that I can give women a voice, or women athletes, women. I mean, for me, to be honest, it wasn't. Like in the beginning, you know, I just wanted to report on sports, and I never looked at it as gendered, you know. I looked at it as athletes who are performing well, athletes who are, if it's swimmers who are making a splash, if it's, you know, volleyballers, if it's athletes, if it's footballers. And so when I started, that was the focus. And of course, yeah, building your career, and you're so excited about, you know, being in places and having access. So I wouldn't say that in the beginning I thought about it in terms of, okay, you know what, here I am, I'm a voice to the women athletes. No. But with time, yes. You start to see the disparity between men and women coverage, like in the media. You start to see the language. You start to see how women athletes are covered. The focus on them and their bodies as opposed to athleticism. And slowly it starts getting to you, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. But what do you mean? Like, you know, why are we just focusing on, you know, why are we looking at volleyball players, Malkia strikers, and calling them sexy? I mean, shouldn't we just be focusing on the fact that they are the best in Africa? You know, yeah, say they are the African queens, because that's true. But let's not talk about, oh, you know, like the sexy volleyballer, you know, or, you know, I don't even know when I talk about the language that is sometimes used to describe athletes. You know, there's a lot of sexism when it comes to female athletes. Yeah, so it starts to get to you, it starts to bother you. And so what you end up doing is now you are intentionally ensuring that women's sports are being covered. On the desk, when there's, you know, when you're thinking about the bulleting, always looking at, you know, looking at the balance. And then I was also so privileged to work for BBC. I'm not working for BBC full-time anymore, but still contribute. And at the BBC is where, like, there was this full awareness that, you know what, we have to do something. And so there was something that was called the 50-50 share. And so what we did, we produced a show every single week. It's 3 shows, a Swahili one, a French one, and an English program. And so all the time it had to be 50-50. It's either whatever it is that we need to do. And you know what? It was never a struggle. It was never a struggle to balance 50-50, which tells you that most of the time it was just the focus. Like most of the times we focus on the men's sports and we forget the women, but we were able to cover incredible stories of women doing amazing things, but probably who are never really covered because we're so focused on men's sports. And you know, men's sports have it's been there since the beginning of time. So it's on your face all the time, you know, and women's sports sometimes it's not always on your face. You have to dig a little bit deeper. And yeah, that's absolutely, you know, what we kept on doing. And the 50-50 approach, gender approach, was just like really amazing to be part of, you know, to be part of such a project. In terms of women in the media, I think I could say that for us who've been there before, we definitely have worked so that they can run. And a lot of the young journalists, female journalists who are coming up, they have something to look at. You know, they can look at us, they can look at what we've achieved. And lots of times I have conversations with, you know, with young upcoming female journalists, just telling them, you know, where you are right now, I was there. And it was worse for me because there weren't a lot of role models. And, you know, it was crazy, but here you are. And, you know, you can do it. This is what you need to do. What are the challenges that you're going through? Sometimes I share photos of myself on a camera filming, you know, just telling them, you know what, like, yeah, I see you starting from scratch. I did start from scratch, and here I am. Just the simple things about, okay, are you struggling to get access to athletes? It's because they probably do not know you. But you know what? Build your name, keep being consistent, keep working hard, be objective, and with no time, athletes are gonna recognize your work and it's going to be easy for you to get access. But do you need to access an athlete? Yes, I do, but I can't. And here I am, I'm gonna help you access an athlete. So I think that's one of the things that, that's how you hold people's hands. And then also, I remember, someone asking me the other day that, what's the one thing that you can say, you can look at and say, you know what, that was hard, but I did that. And people can look at that and say, oh yeah, I can. And I think I'm very proud to be among the first 3 women to, like the very first to commentate at an Africa Cup of Nations. And I mean the men Africa Cup of Nations, not the women like Alcon, but at the men Africa Cup of Nations for the BBC at the 2019 edition in Egypt, in Cairo. And I mean, that was mind-boggling, like sitting and thinking, it's 2019. What do you mean we've never had a female commentator at the Africa Cup of Nations, It's crazy, right? Like that had never happened. How? What do you mean? And it was hard to say yes, knowing that you're gonna be the first. Because when you know you're going to be the first, it's nice, but then the pressure is crazy because you get scrutinized more, especially if you're a woman. I mean, generally, if you're a woman in sports, you get scrutinized more. There are gonna be questions about, are you sure she can do it? Does she know? Is she technical enough? Does she understand? And so knowing that, like it took a while, when my boss at the BBC asked me, I was just like, what? Like, how? No. But then I was like, okay, if I say no, then they're gonna probably have to wait because the opportunities are not always going to be there. So you're not sure someone is going to ask you in 2 years or someone else will be asked in 2 years. It's probably just going to be, we asked them and they said no. So, I mean, we tried our best. And so I remember saying yes, but I was trembling and heading to that particular Africa Cup of Nations. So I was with my colleague who is Nigerian. And, at the hotel in Egypt, our rooms were next to each other. And I remember we spent like so many nights before the Africa Cup of Nations kickoff, like just going through like all the players. We had notes from here to Timbuktu, God knows. We were literally calling people in Senegal, journalists, everyone, just to get like information, like just beyond what we know about, like let's say Sadio Mane. We are calling people in Egypt to find what is it that people don't know about Mo Salah. And the funny thing is, I remember on the first, like the night before we commentated our first game. Like I slept and I think my brain, like I don't know if I was dreaming, but I just feel like I remember waking up and wondering like why is the TV so loud? But the TV wasn't actually on because my brain, I'm sleeping, but I'm just hearing Mo Salah, Mo Salah, Mo Salah. And it was so funny to just wake up and I mean the TV was not on. So that is how much like we had to put in so much, literally your brain is just Mo Salah, Mo Salah, literally you could call me, hi Lynne, and I'll probably go like, oh, Sadio Mane, like something like that. But so I'm very proud that we did that, and now women know that it can be done. And I think in the last Africa Cup of Nations, actually, for the host broadcaster and for like the Confederation of African Football, actually had like women commentators for the first time ever. So, I mean, we showed that it could be done. Was it difficult? Yes. Very challenging. Did we do well? Yes, absolutely. And yeah. Wow, yeah, interesting. Is the local media making strides in terms of making sure there's an equality when it comes to coverage? It's an interesting question, and I can't say yes or no, but there has been progress for sure. There has been progress. It's still a challenge, I would say, because last year I remember, so I had taken up a role as the media liaison for Team Kenya for the Paris Olympic Games, and one of the topics that I was very passionate about was obviously women portrayal, women portrayal in sports. You know, how women portrayed in sports, because it's one thing to cover women, but how do you cover them? You get, because there's one thing, yes, here I am, I'm covering the women, but how do I cover them? So there are strides in terms of coverage locally, of like the fact that women are covered, but there's still a challenge about how they are portrayed. And you find what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, sexism, in terms of the language that is used. Obviously, you find if you go to, like, you know, the sports where women are doing way better, like volleyball, you will get the volleyball girls, the volleyball women's team, Malkia Strikers, get a lot of coverage. You get, you know, in football, when Harambee Starlets are doing really well, they will get a lot of coverage. But it's probably just going to be when it's the national team. Nobody really pays as much attention to the women league as it's paid to the men league. Here's the thing, when it comes to men's sports, obviously they will get coverage just by existing. You know, for women's sports, you've got to be incredibly good for you to be covered, which shouldn't be the case, because, you know, highlight the struggles as well, or like just from where they're starting, when they are progressing, not exactly when they blossom and now you can't ignore them anymore. You know, sometimes it feels like that. You know, for Malkia Strikers, for example, I mean, you can't ignore them. They're the African queens. They beat everybody. Like, are you Egypt? Okay, do you want to be beaten? Okay, come play us. Are you Cameroon? You want to get beaten? Okay, come play Kenya. You know, they've had to get to that level for them to get coverage, right? So on that, you know, on that level, yes and no, strides are there, but it needs to be better. It needs to be better. And during the few media trainings that I did last year with the National Olympics Committee, we had a few forums where, you know, we sat with local journalists, you know, editors, sub-editors, just writers, reporters, you know, to just have a look at, you know, how do you cover women's sports? How are you covering? How do you think you're doing? One of the sessions, like, we literally just had to bring it to an end because it was completely not coming to an end. And, you know, the arguments were, you know what, yeah, but we are covering the women's sports, and we're having a conversation about, but how are you covering them? What photos are you using? What angles are you using? Like, do you need to use a photo of, you know, like, does it need to be a little bit indecent? Okay, I don't know whether to say indecent, but you know what I mean, yeah? Like, does it need to be provocative for it to attract readership, you know? And we couldn't seem to agree. So there were still arguments that, you know what, like, as long as they're getting covered, it doesn't matter the headline. And we need people to click, we need people to read. So there's still there's still a belief that, you know, for women's sports to sell, it's got to be sexy, you know, which is ridiculous, right? Yeah, so there's strides. It just needs to be, it needs to be better, to be honest, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, we're still having conversations about, like, equal pay, right? Like, equal pay for men and women, even just in the sport itself. Of course, there's progress, you know, like, there's progress in football. I think in athletics, it's equal pay. If it's a gold medal, it's a gold medal. In so many other sports as well. Obviously, for football, there's still disparity for AFCON and AFCON, and the argument becomes, you know, AFCON is still attracting more sponsors than the AFCON, you know, and understandably so. You know, AFCON has been there for ages. You have AFCON, like, sort of just starting to gain grounds. And so I think there's a bit where you have to be, like, completely logical and have a look at, okay, you know what, like, do you agree with the argument that, you know, like, women attract less sponsorships and men attract less, I mean, more sponsorship? That's true. That's true, and it shouldn't be the case, because even just looking at, let's say, locally, even the, you know, the Kenya Rugby Union, the men's national sevens team, will always be sponsored. The women will always struggle before they kind of get a sponsor. But in terms of, let's say, individual athletes, looking at individual athletes now, I think it's the same. To be honest, in terms of attracting sponsors, is the space equal? Is the space conducive for both men and women? Are there equal opportunities for sponsorships? I would say yes. I would say yes. If you put Faith Kipyegon here, you put Eliud Kipchoge here, I mean, they've both achieved and they will both attract probably different kind of sponsorships. You'll probably get Faith Kipyegon attracting sponsorships that are more inclined probably to, especially because she's a mom, you'll probably get people who are like, you know, doing home care, home staff, motherhood, you know, more attracted to her. For Eliud, you'll probably get general brands or people doing farm businesses and stuff like that. They attract different kind of sponsorships, but I think now opportunities available are sort of the same. But the reason, like, I think one of the major contributing factor to that sort of equality is the fact that athletes now have an opportunity to tell their story and say, like, tell the world who they are through social media. I think social media has been one of the most powerful tools available to athletes, because initially, remember, they had no control. They have to get coverage from the mainstream media for them to become a brand, for them to become a star. So if you're a woman and you're not exactly getting enough coverage wherever you are, it means as a sponsor, I probably don't see value in you. And understandably so, that they will go to the men. That is why, like, equality in coverage is very important, is super, super important. But now with social media, I feel like it's such a huge equalizer and it's really amazing. So for female athletes who are able to build their brands on social media, they are getting as much sponsors and much like sponsorships and attention as the men, or even more, depending on how you're able to brand yourself. You know, the power of social media when it comes to personal branding is just incredible, that you don't have to really come cover me. Yes, it's nice. You want to be covered by mainstream and all that, like, that's good, but that's not all. That you have this opportunity to build your brand and to interact directly with fans without a middle person. That I can be here on my Instagram and I'm chatting and responding to my fans. They're asking me questions. Sponsors can now directly come to you, you know, without having to think, okay, you know, I need to. Social media has just been incredible, and I think it's really been able to bridge that gap. Wow, here's the thing to any woman who wants to do anything in sports. Of course, there will always be a voice that tells you you can't. So I guess for me, I would say, do it, like, do it. They say you can't, do it, you know, like, get in there. It's not gonna be easy. There's going to be, I don't even know, like, challenges are gonna be enormous. And here's the thing, the first thing will be, people are going to doubt your capabilities. Because you're a woman coming into a sports space, a male-dominated space, so there will be questions about your abilities. So what do you do about that? Make sure that you are well-equipped, that nobody can challenge your capabilities. I think for me, that has been the most powerful thing. When I got in and I realized people challenge you because they probably think you're not good enough, then be better than what they imagine. Then people are not gonna question you. I feel like it's been a while since I felt like someone looked at me as a female sports reporter. I feel like I don't know, in the last many years, I feel like in spaces I've been or whatever, like, I am treated as a sports reporter, not as a female sports reporter. So here's the thing, let's stop doing this gender, oh, she's a female sports reporter, but we never say, oh, here is a male sports reporter. What do you mean? Like, this is a sports reporter, you know? So how do you become a sports reporter? Be good at what you do, be passionate, focus, because there are gonna be a million and one voices saying you can't. Just focus and know that you can. Have your goals super clear. know what you want to achieve. I think when you have goals that are super clear, it's easy for you to stay focused, because anything else that is said that can take you off the path of your goals, then you just know that you can't pay attention to it. It's just keeping on being better, believing, and just knowing that people have been there, they've done it, and so you can. Yeah, nobody ever says, nobody, when you think about it, like it's so funny, and it goes to, I don't exactly have a huge problem with this, but just look at it. It's just the way it's structured. We say the World Cup, but we say the Women's World Cup. We say the national team Harambee Stars, but then we say the women national team Harambee Starlets. You get, like, maybe because Harambee Stars came before Harambee Starlets, so they were the team, they were the national team, and then now this is the women's national team. So sometimes I tend to not overthink and just be like, okay, you know what, like, yeah, it's also, be proud to be a woman, and there's nothing wrong to being referred as the women's national team, but it just gets to tell you that it's always going to be the men's sports and then the women's and then the women's sports. But as long as everybody in their own spaces are trying to just make sure there's equality, if you have a newspaper, for example, don't squeeze in like an incredible woman's story because you think people will be more interested in reading about results from a men's game. It's probably because for the longest they're conditioned to read story, because these are the stories that have been available, so that's what they read. Give them something different, give them the women who are doing incredible things kind of feature. How are women balancing motherhood and sports? How are they navigating, even stereotypes at home where you are a woman and you probably, you think this should be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but it's still happening. Like a lot of women are still being told, you know what, like, wachana na mchezo. It's men who do that. Like, sit home and raise the kids or look for something better to do. And a lot of women have been able to rise above that. So imagine stories just highlighting what they are doing, just to be able to encourage other young women who want to come into the sports space. But all I know is the sports space belongs to all of us. It belongs to the men, it belongs to the women, it belongs to the young, it belongs to the old. It's the most diverse, amazing, beautiful space anyone can ever be in. I feel so lucky and so privileged to have spent my whole adult life around the sports space. I don't know. I don't know if I would have survived anywhere else. I don't know. Life is so much better being in the sports space. So for any woman, please don't give up that. Don't give up that just because someone is gonna say you can't. No, please, come on. The space is beautiful and it belongs to you. Wow, how do you achieve a balance between such a busy and family? The truth is, you don't. Honestly, people who say that I'm balancing work and family, it's not true. I think what happens is work, family integration, where for me, I love to look at it like that, where sometimes you're gonna take work home, you're gonna go and finish off an article home at the dining table, still spending time with your family, but then you're finishing off an article. So every now and then you'll just be like, okay, please quiet. Every now and then you'll be like, okay, please eat your food. So I don't think I would call that balance. It's more of family work integration. And the thing is, you always have to look at the fact that when you choose to be, for example, at a World Cup, or you choose to be at the Olympics, it means at that particular time, you chose that one thing and not the other. So you see, there's no balance. It means I've chosen to be at the World Cup as opposed to being at home. I've chosen to be at the Olympics as opposed to attending a family event, as opposed to being there for my kids' sports days or for this and that. So the truth is that there's no balance, and you have to be, like, you just have to be so, I don't even, like, I'm even struggling to find the word. You just have to sit and just be clear about what is important to you. And it's okay to have 2 or 3 things important to you. It's figuring out when you're not here, how do you make sure this other side does not suffer? Because here's the thing, if you have kids, for example, for me, I have kids, and one of the things that I've always wanted is to raise free kids, like kids who don't grow up with a lot of debt in terms of, you guys, you need to come home. I don't want to guilt my kids, like, oh, you didn't come spend time with me over the holidays, and you guys, when you were young, I never went. Actually, I could have gone to the Olympics, I could have covered the World Cup, but I chose to stay with you at home. They don't even remember. Like, do you remember breastfeeding? Do you? You don't. And I want my kids to be free, and for them to be free, then I want to be able to do the things that are important to me as well, things that I'm passionate about. So if I'm gonna have to up and go to the Olympics, to the Paris 2024 Olympics, in 2028, we're gonna have the Olympics, yes, that's true. It's not a lie, but it's gonna be the LA 2028 Olympics, not the Paris 2024 Olympics, right? So I'm still gonna sit down 10 years from now and tell my kids, oh, I hear Paris was amazing, but I never went because guess what, you guys, I had to stay home because we had a sports day and all that. So it's choosing, it's just sitting and looking at what is important and making sure you have a strong support system so that when you're not there, you have people who are standing in the gap and making sure that what you would have done is still done, and just making sure that you don't let the guilt of, but you left your kids back at home, but you left your husband, you left your husband at home. Like, just making sure that, those are not the kind of conversations that the conversations you're having. But yeah, if you're doing what we do, no, there's no balance. You don't balance time and family, you integrate. And by the way, speaking of the Olympics, now that we were speaking about like the strides that are being made, one very important aspect is that for the Paris 2024 Olympics, it was the first games ever where the IOC, the International Olympics Committee, was able to achieve the 50-50 gender parity across all fields. Across the field of play, across coaching, across like just staff and officials. So it was really incredible, and so it can be done. Yeah, it can be done. And I know there's always an argument about, you do not want to say 50-50 because you're probably creating space for women, even if they're not qualified. Like, are you just getting women on the table just to fill the numbers? I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. There are a lot of capable women who honestly just haven't been able to sit on tables because they don't think they belong to those tables. Sometimes they don't even know such tables exist, and they are just so busy trying to better themselves up, while also, very bound by the societal norms and pressures. So it's a complex situation, but yeah. So women need to put themselves out there, but then I don't want to say women in rooms need to bring in other women. I want to say everybody who is in rooms and who is on tables needs to bring qualified people to the table, and those people can be women, and most of the times those people are women. So let them come in. Like, we need a lot of men allies as well, who sit on tables and are like, oh, wait a minute, but this woman was qualified, did we just let them go because they were a man? We need men who can say, oh, by the way, I remember going to school with this particular lady, And I saw the other day that this is what she's doing. I think she would be good for us. I think she would add value to us. Wow, okay, that's actually interesting, like a very interesting question. So maybe, how do I answer that? Okay, here's the thing, probably I would be in parliament. No, I wouldn't vie for any political seat. Gosh, I hate politics. I think it's too tiring and too exhausting. However, probably what would have happened, here's the thing. I remember, when you're out of campus and you're applying for jobs, and I remember my dad brought home a newspaper one day and was like, because I was doing my, after school, I was doing stuff for KBC because they called me back, but it was for free. So I guess my dad was tired of just giving me fare and lunch, every day. But then, what are you doing? Makupeleka shule, bado nakupea fare na lunch, He didn't say that, but when parents start bringing you things that are so off your space, you just know, hapa. Hey. So he brought me a newspaper, and it had, the Parliament, the National Assembly was looking for, I think, clerks, for clerks, and I applied for the job, and then I forgot about it and continued asking my dad for fare to go chase my passion, and I think a whole 6 months, probably a whole 6 months down the line, I actually received a call from the National Assembly. And I had gotten a job, I had gotten the job. I think they wanted about 5 clerks, so I was among the 5 who got the job, to work at the National Assembly. And I told my dad, and he was so happy. But I had at least made strides, kidogo. I used to get paid sometimes, when I do something on air that is sponsored, I would actually get paid. And then for 1 month, I do have to ask for fare. So I think he had kind of seen potential. Okay, maybe something could happen. And so when the job came, for me, it was so clear that, no, I can't take it. Now I was even getting more rooted into this space. And so I said no to the job. So probably, okay, my dad was not very happy. So probably that's where I would have been. I would be doing parliamentary things. Saying, hey, order guys, order. Yeah, but I think probably, I really can't think of anything else that I would have become. Probably a farmer. I don't even know what kind of a farmer. Honestly, sijui, I really don't know, because you see, here's the thing. For me, it was always so clear. It wasn't even just journalism. It was sports journalism. So I'm not even able to picture myself being able to do something else. And I look at so many instances where I had a choice to do other things and where it was easier to choose something else than choosing what I do. And somehow I still ended up choosing what I do. I remember my internship, by the way, at KBC, how it happened. For people, a lot of people who've been in journalism school, when you go to KBC, it's a lot of you on a reporting date, and then you find a panel of experienced journalists who are asking you which department you want to go to. So you'll find there's a business editor, there's a sports editor, there's a current news editor. Probably right now there would be a climate change person or something. But I remember now during my time, we had this panel, and you would go in. You already got the internship letter, yes, but they still have to place you in different spaces. And I remember going in, and they asked me what desk I wanted to go to, and I said sports desk. And they all looked at me, and they kind of laughed at me. I don't know whether it's at me or at the audacity or at, what do you mean? See, and I just know it's because I was a woman. No, actually, I don't just know. They said it. Because they told me, first of all, sports desk imeja. And then they told me, you could actually be good at other things. If you choose something else like current affairs, kuna kwangana space mingi sana of watu wa kusoma weather, the weather girls. I know, but probably I could have been a weather girl, I don't know. But yeah, I remember them telling me that, and they said that the last time they had a woman, they had a lady at the sports desk that apparently she didn't do so well. Oh, and that's why I'm always if I ever get a role, something to do, I always like to do even more so that nobody ever says we can't give this role to a woman. Like, you just have to make sure, do it well so that nobody ever questions and says we can't get a woman to this role. So anyway, yeah, so the person who had been there apparently didn't do a very good job. And so I told them, then it's fine, then it's okay, we'll look elsewhere. I look for an internship elsewhere if I can't go to the sports desk. And they were like, enda uko nje ungoje, enda uko. So I just went outside, I waited. And so I think they wanted to just see everybody and see what the ratio was like. And so, yeah, they went around and they saw everybody. And funny enough, only one other person wanted to be on the sports desk. And so it ended up being myself and him. So it was now the two of us. So, but it had to be, like, let's wait and see. And I was ready to just walk out and go look elsewhere. I don't know where that would have been. But I wasn't going to go to current affairs. I wasn't going to go to the business desk. I wasn't going to go to just any other desk. It was always the sports desk. So that's why I'm so sure when I reflect that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I don't think I will ever be in any other sports, any other space apart from the sports space. What is going to happen is I'm just going to keep on transitioning, like transition to something else, transition to management, transition to administration probably. I'm not so sure about administration, especially if it's like public office and all. But yeah, sports for life, man.